Hey folks, it's Dr. Sam, and I'm on a great hike today. I'm about 20 miles southeast of Santa Fe in the wilderness. The shot that I showed you at the beginning of this video was Shaggy Peak. I was just over there, and it's a beautiful day. I want to talk about progressive myopia. And this is a deterioration of your eyes, and there was a couple of people who've been asking questions about whether you can actually improve nearsightedness as you get older, because they were told that your eyes only get worse as you age and there's nothing you can do in terms of your nearsightedness. Well, I'm going to quote a study that came out. This was published in the American Academy of Ophthalmology, and they partnered with the National Eye Institute and the University of California at Davis. And in this study, they found that almost 10% of all people diagnosed with nearsightedness actually have a condition called progressive degenerative myopia. And this particular amount of myopia is about -6 diopters. So what that means is you basically have about 6 layers of lenses that they grind into a lens, and that's what you're wearing. It's a very strong prescription. Now, in terms of the study, what they reported was back in the early 1970s, there were about 23 million people who were diagnosed with myopia. And that number is about doubled in about 25 years. So now there are about 43 million Americans who suffer myopia. And about 10% of those have this progressive degenerative myopia condition. So one of the side effects of having this degeneration is that it can create something called choroidal neovascularization. So the choroid is the covering of the eye. It kind of protects the retina. And what happens with choroidal neovascularization when you've got this progressive myopia is that unstable blood vessels start to form in the choroid and they move into the retina, and this can cause hemorrhaging and bleeding. It can also lead to things like retinal holes, lattice degeneration in the retina, and even retinal detachments. So in terms of this progressive degenerative myopia, what the study concluded was there's really not much you can do for it. It's just an aging process. There's also a genetic predisposition, and that was basically what the study reported. So is there a way to slow down or reverse nearsightedness? Is that even possible? Well, that's the question that I'm going to answer today. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about your myopia or nearsightedness from a more whole health point of view. So we want to blame faulty vision on a deteriorating eyeball. And as I've said before, it's not the eyeball's fault when it changes its prescription, but it's the programming behind the eyes. It's what our brain is saying to our eyes to adapt to the situation we're going through. So although there might be a genetic predisposition, environment has a really big influence on our refractive error, whether we're nearsighted or farsightedness, or we have astigmatism. So in terms of nearsightedness, the behavioral adaptation that people make in that process is that they pull the visual world in and they blur out the distance so that it's a way they protect themselves. So something is out of control in their environment, they tense up, they pull their visual world in. There may be fear associated with it or a lack of trust, and so they tighten up their eyes and they perpetuate that paradigm. And so then they go to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor basically does a great job in validating the prescription. So you start wearing that prescription, and guess what? It gets worse. So you just keep perpetuating the reaction that you're creating, and that increases your prescription over time. So basically what prescribing nearsighted glasses does is it's treating a symptom. The problem is stress up close, but what eye doctors are trained to do, including me, is let's get rid of the blur, let's correct the distance acuity. And if you've been to an eye exam recently, you're sitting in a dark room, and which is clearer, number 1 or number 2, those are the lenses that they show you. And let's say you guess number 2 and you get the prescription and you start wearing it, and let's say it gives you a headache or you start feeling a little dizzy or nauseous. So then what happens is you go back to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, don't worry, you'll get used to it. And so you tense more, you tunnel more, and then digital devices are introduced. So now you're working up close with a prescription that was designed for distance. And so there's this accelerated loss of your vision. And this is what nearsightedness is. So in my process, in my practice, what I have found is that there are definitely some key principles that you can apply to, at the very least, slow down your myopia, and at the best, you can reverse myopia. So I want to go into those principles in a moment, but I want to share my own experience, because when I was a child, I became about 3 diopters in myopia. And when I was in my late 20s, I actually met a holistic eye doctor, and I went through his process called vision therapy. And in that process, what I learned was that I was really tensing my eyes, and that I had difficulty using my eyes together. And this created a stress pattern that actually I was able to reverse through this physical therapy. And I'm not nearsighted anymore. I haven't been for over 25 years. And I see clearly at distance and I see clearly at near. So I realized that, my vision problem, my nearsightedness, was more than in the eyeball, but actually it's in the brain. It was in my posture, it was in my movement, it was in my emotions. I even think it was in my diet and my biochemistry and what I was eating. So in terms of some techniques that you can do if you have this diagnosis of myopia, or you even have a more serious condition called progressive or degenerative myopia, here are some ideas for you. Number 1, I would recommend, if you're not doing it already, to change your diet. Your retina has one of the highest metabolic needs of the body. And when we start developing eye deterioration of any kind, there's a deterioration in our nourishment, our ability to absorb our nutrients. And what the eyes really need is a lot of antioxidants. We've been down this before, where we've talked about the importance of the carotenoids, the luteins and zeaxanthins, astaxanthins. I also think beta carotene and vitamin C, vitamin E. Your fats are really important, so that's the omega-3 fish oils, the nuts and seeds, coconut oil, MCT oil. If you eat meat, probably eating some sockeye salmon and, grass-fed beef and organic chicken and pasture-fed eggs. These are really important in terms of the amino acids and certain things you need in terms of proteins and fats. I would cut out a lot of the carbohydrates, things that have sugar in them, because there is a correlation between, your blood sugar levels and your eye health, especially your retina. Chromium has been found as a trace mineral to be very important in slowing down the progressive myopia pattern. I would also add things like selenium, magnesium. Any of the trace minerals that you can get into your body are also really important. I think glutathione is another one that I would put on my list in terms of taking more glutathione as a way to increase the antioxidants in our eyes. Because the retina, if it doesn't get enough oxygenation and hydration, then what happens is it loses the ability to get rid of free radicals or metabolic waste that tends to accumulate. And one of the issues that happens with progressive myopia is this choroidal neovascularization. And what this means is the choroid is the back covering of the eye, and neovascularization means that unstable blood vessels are being created as a way to balance out the lack of nourishment that the retina is getting. So your body is trying to get the nourishment, but these blood vessels are unstable and it can lead to a stretching of the retina, can lead to hemorrhaging, and ultimately a retinal detachment. So your diet plays a big role in reversing or at least slowing down progressive myopia. I would say number two, you need to get really informed about the eyeglass or contact lens prescription you're wearing. Most prescriptions are too strong for you, especially if you're using them for digital devices. And so, asking your doctor for a computer prescription or a reading prescription, that's single vision. This is another really important point because the myopia pattern is about tightening and narrowing and tunneling and excluding your peripheral vision. And if you're using something like progressive glasses, progressive lenses, the invisible bifocals, or even regular bifocals, what you're doing is you're training your eyes and your brain to tunnel your vision, and it induces more myopia. And it also puts a lot of pressure on your maculas. So there's a saying that the bigger the window you look through, the more relaxed your eyes become. The better your depth perception, the better your memory, your information processing is also improved. So the prescription that you're wearing for distance, I would get a reduced prescription for the computer. I would even start wearing those around indoors, and I would make a comparison between the computer glasses and your distance glasses in terms of how they feel on your eye muscles. If you can start to recognize that the weaker computer lens prescription is more relaxing, even though you don't see as clearly out of it, over time, your eyes are going to adjust to the weaker prescription, and you're going to be able to drive with those. So the prescription that you're wearing is really important. I would also take into account, taking breaks on the computer or your iPhone or your iPad, because those are creating incredible stress and your eye muscles are focused at one distance for long stretches. This is what induces and causes myopia. There was a study done many years ago with Eskimos. And in this study, they found that, in the general population, Eskimos had a very low risk of developing myopia. Then they took a group of Eskimos and they put them in school. They educated them. And they found that most of them became nearsighted. So when you're doing a lot of near work, close work, this induces myopia and nearsightedness. So one of the ways to counteract that is to do what I'm doing today, which is take a walk in nature, get out into the expanse. I think we all suffer NDD, nature deficit disorder. And because of all the electronics and all the Wi-Fi and all the things that we're doing in terms of technology, when we come out to nature and we get into that expansion in our vision, it relaxes our mind, our eyes, and our body, and it helps us release and reduce stress. So that's my next topic, stress. If you are, doing a lot of close work, I would include stress reduction techniques. On my website, there's a lot of eye exercises, palming, sunning, scanning. I would recommend doing these eye exercises every day to improve your circulation and discharge the stress that gets accumulated in the eyes. Because if you have stress that's accumulated, this is going to induce more nearsightedness and myopia. Really important. And finally, what I would say is that, even though you've gotten the information from your doctor that, you've got this myopia situation, and according to, the standard conventional approach, there's nothing you can do. There are so many things that you can do to improve your eyes and vision. And so you want to seek out people like myself who are more holistically minded, who can offer you alternatives and suggestions to improve your vision. And I'll leave you with this one final thought, that even though you're getting older, you can improve any eye condition, and you can do that at any age. You just need to have the formula. So that's my message for today. I think I'm gonna get back on the trail. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take good care.